everyone, and welcome to Look Down There, the show where we talk about all the things we don't talk about. I'm your host, Michelle Amore. Today, my guest is a psychologist from Los Angeles, and she aims to help people have better sex and better relationships. Now, that is a doctor I can get behind. She is the creator of the Big O Masterclass, and she is here with me today, the doctor of, oh yeah, Dr. Erica Marchand.
That's the best introduction I've ever gotten.
I just gave you a new tagline, so you're welcome.
I really appreciate that. I'm going to take it and run with it.
Yeah. I've been calling you the orgasm doctor at home, so I don't know if that's something you go by.
I love that. I would love to be known as the orgasm doctor. I mean, it's such a worthy cause.
Yes, it is. It is such a worthy cause. And, you know, when I was looking at your course and just how you talk about it, I love that you say you want to help people learn to have orgasms. And I noticed that it was really a definitive learn, not to have better orgasms, but to learn how to have them in the first place. And I think that's really important that we don't come out of the gate with like, bigger, better, faster, stronger. You know, it's like, let's just learn, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my goal with the course and all my work around orgasms is to, let people know that it's a learnable skill. So sometimes if you've never had one before, you can have all kinds of doubts about, can I do this? Maybe my body's just wired differently. Maybe this is just not going to happen for me. And so most of the time it is actually a learnable skill. It's just something that we might not have figured out yet, what our bodies and minds need in order to do it. So yeah, that is definitely the first thing. And then there are times that I talk about, having more orgasms, having better ones, having easier ones, but certainly it's not, I agree with you. It's not a competition or a, kind of like a goal-oriented thing. It's just one, more pleasure, wanting to have more pleasure, learning to have more pleasure, and allowing orgasms to happen more easily if you already have them.
Yeah, I think we're really good at self-scrutiny, but not so great at self-discovery. And I think, if you're struggling with having an orgasm, I think there's that internal dialogue that runs in the background.
It's so true. It's so true. I mean, I think most of us have been there at some point of, like you said, struggling to have an orgasm, kind of trying to have one, wondering if you're going to, whether it's going to happen or not. And then there is this internal dialogue and self-monitoring that starts to happen that takes us out of the experience of pleasure, which is what would lead to the orgasm. And so it becomes this very kind of not self-defeating, but very, very kind of struggling process.
Yeah. I think, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that happens for so many of us at some point or another.
Yeah, definitely getting stuck in your head can I say vulva block you, I guess?
Ooh, vulva block. Yes, it can.
We're coming up with all the catchphrases here today.
Yes, you're good at this.
Well, I think when we think about a woman orgasming, maybe the first thing that comes to mind would be the scene from Harry Met Sally, or like something from porn, like where, it's a really easy thing to fake. And I think that we can fall into that because we want to please whoever we're with, right? Like we want to be like, you're doing great. And we come from this nature of just wanting to please and tend to the pleasure of others rather than really going out and grabbing our own pleasure.
Yes, I could not agree with that more. I think that's a big part of what's behind the phenomenon of definitely faking orgasms. And again, many of us have, done that at some point or another, because you're right, we want to please our partners and we want to give them this reinforcement for what they're doing, even if it's not the thing that really would bring us the most pleasure. We're trying to be nice and good, kind of good in bed. Yeah, so I couldn't agree with that more. And it's interesting that you talk about what we're presented with as what orgasms look like in the media, because it's so true. Sometimes they're that, but then other times they're actually really different. Like they could be very quiet, or certainly as in comparison to porn, most women don't have orgasms just through thrusting and intercourse, right? And that's often how they show up in porn. That's really not the case for most women. So yeah, all the representations of orgasm that are out there are, I mean, maybe true for some subset of women, but often not true for most of us. And so we don't often get to see what it actually looks like for most women to have orgasms, which I would love it if there were more actual, or if more people, because they are out there, but if more people had more regular access to what it actually looks like for a woman to have an orgasm, it might just normalize what many of us need in order to do it. And that we're totally doing it right. There's nothing wrong with how we're doing it. It's just like it hasn't been represented accurately. So we just don't realize.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you have to be really intentional about that and what you're consuming. Because immediately, like, you can't help but see something and have that external imagery influence you. And then you start comparing yourself and thinking, well, maybe I'm not doing it right. Or like, I'm not, wild enough or whatever.
Free enough or
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, I saw on your Instagram that you're saying the female orgasm is having a moment right now. And yeah, so, I mean, I would say, maybe the focus on the vulva is really present right now.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
That's such a good question. Gosh, I think there's probably a lot of reasons. Probably the primary reason is that there are so many more women in fields that study this, right? Like in psychology, in medicine, in creative fields. And there's just so many more women who are in positions where we can spread the word just across the board than there ever have been before. So there's just more of us, and more of us are interested in this. I think also, I'm going to be a little bit political. You / the audience might agree with me or not, but I think there is, at least in the US in the past 4 years, there was this very, obviously we had a president who was really misogynistic, and there, I think, was also this real backlash, this real kind of pulling to the other direction against that for a lot of people from a lot of groups who've been, historically oppressed or disadvantaged. And I think women being one of those. And so I think just kind of politically, socioculturally, there's been a pull against, or a push against that patriarchy and that misogynistic kind of attitude that was emanating down from, the top ranks of our society for so long. And I think a lot of us are just like, screw this. I don't know, if this is, if this is the chance that I get to say something about this, like this is the life that I have, and there's a platform for me to say something, by God, I'm going to say it, because I'm fed up with, like you said, pleasing my partner instead of myself. I'm fed up with all of these messages about being there for the service of men. If we're talking about, kind of heteronormative ways of looking at men and women. So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
What about you?
Like, finally, enough is enough, right?
Enough is enough. Yeah.
I totally agree with you. And, I always feel that our pleasure is power. And I feel like when we connect to that pleasure, we are more in our power. And I think one of the things that's probably scary to the patriarchy is that if a woman is in her power, she can't be controlled.
Right. That's
So
the
what
whole
do we do
thing.
with that, right? Like, so what do we do? How do we sell to that person? How, like, what, like, where does capitalism lie in that?
Mhm.
When we suddenly we have self-confidence and we
Mhm.
have pleasure in literally our own hands,
Yes.
what do you do with that?
Yes, right. It's this whole wide open field that we're not used to having. None of us are used to having, I think. And you're right. There's been a kind of an investment by patriarchal society to keep women controlled in various ways. And yeah, like you're saying, sexual repression is one of those ways. So what do we do with that? I mean, I think the hopeful part of that question is like, oh my God, what do we do with that? We can
Right?
do
It's
so
exciting.
much.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it's like
exciting
a paradigm shift.
yeah, it's exciting to realize your power and be like,
Yeah.
yeah, look at me, you
Look at
know?
this. Yeah. To realize your power and also to realize that um, I think just to realize your capacity for pleasure, that things can feel really good. Life can feel, at least at times, maybe better than you thought it could. If we can understand what we need and if we're able to prioritize what we need, it opens the door to, I think, a much more pleasurable, much nicer life than we might have grown up thinking we were going to have or that we might have lived in the past. I think that's that's a big draw for pleasure, that life
Yeah.
could just feel better.
Yeah. And I think really the first step towards that is realizing that you're worth it.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
like L'Oreal says, because you're worth it, right?
And you know what? They're right.
You are right. You are worth it. You are deserving.
Yes, you are
Yeah.
deserving.
So
Yes.
tell me about your orgasm spectrum quiz.
Oh, I would love
Because I
to.
looked at it last night and you
Yeah.
talked about five different types of
Mhm.
like styles of orgasm.
Yes. Yes, yes. Yeah, five different kind of places on the spectrum. Um, I love that quiz. I developed it just based on my work with women and based on research on orgasms. And so, um, if you take the quiz, and we can say at the end where to find the quiz, but when you take the quiz, we ask a number of questions to try to understand, yeah, what's your style of having orgasms? Under what conditions do you have them, and under which conditions do you struggle? And have you ever had one before or not? And based on that, I have identified kind of five spots on the, I'll call it the orgasm spectrum, that just describes how people have orgasms. So the first spot I call newbies, so women who haven't had an orgasm yet. The second one is elusive orgasms. So orgasms that women who have orgasms sometimes, but it's not really consistent and it's not really clear under what conditions you have them and under what conditions you don't. Sometimes they might just surprise you and arrive in a given situation, but you don't consistently know like how to make sure you have one. And then the third spot on the spectrum is solo orgasm. So women who can have orgasms by themselves, but not with partners most of the time. The fourth spot is shy orgasm. So women who have orgasms with some partners, sometimes by themselves, yes, but with some partners sometimes, but not others other times. And then the fifth is confident orgasm. So orgasms that you, knowing how to, have an orgasm when you want to, when the circumstances are right for you by yourself or with a partner. And I like it because I know that it has, even though there are five, phases or spots on the spectrum, I don't arrange them hierarchically, like one's better than the other. I just like to describe the range to show that these are some possibilities. These are different ways that people experience their orgasms and under what conditions they have them and that they don't. So so that's what the outcome of the orgasm spectrum quiz is, knowing where you are on the spectrum.
Yeah, I love when you say shy orgasms, I imagine like someone holding back a sneeze. Like
Yes, exactly. It's like, oh,
It's really cute.
like, should I? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what about different kinds of orgasms? Because
Mhm.
we can experience a lot of different kinds of orgasms. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Different kinds of orgasms. I might have a little bit of an unpopular opinion on this one. Because I know people will talk about like, and when you say different kinds of orgasms, tell me if this is what you mean. So people will talk about like clitoral or vaginal orgasms, nipple orgasms, cervical orgasms, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think, yeah, there's lots of different ways to have orgasms. Different people experience orgasms from stimulation on various parts of the body, or sometimes not even physical stimulation at all. Like you can have an orgasm in a dream, or you can have an orgasm just with mental stimulation, or some people can.
I
And
think I
so,
definitely had an orgasm in a dream like a few nights ago.
isn't it crazy?
I've never experienced that before, but
Yeah.
it was crazy. It was like, oh my God, like what's happening? But it was amazing. And
Yeah.
I woke up feeling like great.
Right?
Yeah, that had never happened to me before. I don't know like what things had to line up in the universe to make it happen, but let's make it
Right?
happen again.
Yes. When you love to wake up like that every morning, just, welcome to the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty amazing. And I think that, yeah, I think there are things about the connection between our mind and body that we don't always fully understand when it comes to orgasm. Actually, that's true. We don't fully understand all of the factors, mind, body, that go into orgasm. There's research going on, but at this point, yeah, there's more questions to be answered. So in that sense of having different kinds of orgasms, like experiencing orgasms from stimulation on different parts of the body, absolutely. And I think that's a really interesting, cool thing. When it comes to like differentiating between clitoral and vaginal orgasms, that distinction specifically, so my opinion, and this is where I might have the unpopular opinion on this one, my opinion is that it's really not meaningful to separate them unless it's meaningful to the woman herself, right? So, and the reason I say that is because I'm sure a lot of your listeners and you and I have probably seen like the updated diagram of the clitoris. That's, quite a large internal organ that kind of wraps around the vaginal walls on the inside. And so is involved probably in orgasms that we might have called vaginal in the past. Mm-hmm. So the vagina and the clitoris are just like best friends. They just hang out together. And so it's hard to say, is it one or the other? And the reason that I don't like to make a distinction between those two in particular is because just historically in psychology, in sexual medicine, they've been ranked as like vaginal orgasms being better than clitoral ones. And even today, honestly, like with some people out in sex ed and sexuality that I see speaking today, some people still talk about it in some form of that, like, well, you can learn how to have vaginal orgasms and that would be better, for example. And I don't like to rank them like that. And so for those, that's why I don't really make a distinction. It's like, your clitoris is amazing. It's involved. It provides a lot of nerve endings and a lot of sensation, and it's like right next door to everything else. So it's, they're all working together down there. Yeah. So that's my opinion on that one. I know it might not be as sexy as talking about kind of more kind of mysterious ways to have orgasms, but I like to just normalize, what most women's experience is of needing the clitoris to be involved. So yeah,
absolutely. I think we can definitely kind of glorify the vaginal orgasm, which again, I do agree with you. Like I don't really feel like it's a difference because yes, the clitoris is involved the whole time, right? It takes a village, people.
It takes a village. Exactly. And I think it's so lovely that women can have orgasms without When I think back to sort of historically why psychologists, for example, thought that clitoral orgasms were not as great as vaginal ones, it was because vaginal ones could be had during intercourse with a guy.
Mhm.
And that was supposed to somehow be better because then you were more responsive to the guy that you were sleeping with, right? And so it becomes this very uncomfortable kind of like male associated thing. And so, yeah, it takes a village. And I think it's lovely that women can have orgasms all kinds of different ways. You don't have to be doing one specific thing to come, which is nice.
Right. Yeah. Again, self-discovery is so important.
Yeah.
So this may just be the kinds of feeds that I'm following, but I feel like there's so much talk about squirting these days.
Oh my gosh.
Uh,
Yes, I've seen that too.
so like,
Yeah.
what's your take on that? Because I feel like that's
Mhm.
another thing that's like, well, now I got to learn how to squirt and I'm not doing it.
Totally.
I'm not squirting.
I know the performance pressure. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that, yeah, I agree with you. I see a ton about squirting these days, the past couple years, maybe too. It's a thing. And it's like, oh, maybe I need to learn how to do that. So it used to be thought that some women squirted and some women didn't. And it was just sort of natural variation in how your body was set up. There's been a lot of research and controversy about what is squirting, like what's involved, what is that fluid? Like, is it kind of the female equivalent of prostatic fluid? Because we have like prostate equivalent cells in our G spot. Is it just urine, which it's not? So there's been just a lot of conversation about it. But you're right. It seems like there's, to your point about now I have to learn how to squirt. It does seem like now there's what is it? Is it like a spectacle aspect to it, or like a performance aspect to it, or like I didn't really have good sex unless I did this. So yeah, that is unhelpful, I think. Of course, if you want to learn how to squirt and you just want to learn how to do it for yourself, I think there's courses out there, even there's instruction, in the spirit of self-discovery, like you're saying, if you want to, go for it. But yeah, that performance pressure, I don't think is really helpful.
Right. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's good that it's being talked about, but
Mhm.
I'm picking up on this hint of like an added pressure. It's like,
Yes.
again, like bigger, better, faster.
Bigger, better, faster,
Winner.
fireworks. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like
Wetter.
you better have a wet ass pussy.
Right. Exactly.
That's a lot of
Exactly.
pressure too. And
Yeah.
the non-concordance. Let's talk about that because
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of pressure on that as well. Like, look, I'm really into it. Like I want to have sex, but I'm super dry and then that's confusing, right? So let's talk
Right.
about that a little bit.
Yeah, that is really confusing. And you're right. Just like squirting or how you have an orgasm, there's a lot of individual variation in how wet a person gets, just in terms of, how we're all wired and set up. And then certainly over the course of life. And depending on what medications you're taking, like there can be so many things that influence how wet or lubricated you get in response to feeling sexual. And it's not, just like you're saying, it's not an indicator necessarily of whether you're turned on or not. It sometimes just depends on your body. You can be really turned on and not wet. Conversely, you can be not really into a thing, but quite wet because it's just sexually relevant, but not necessarily something you want. So, yeah, I think it's important not to put too much pressure again on getting lubricated and just to, I think, kind of taking a practical approach is really helpful. Assuming that you know what it is that's making you not wet. Like if it's a sudden change, you probably want to understand what's going on just so you know what's going on with your body. But if you just know that that's just kind of how it is for you, get some good lube that you like and just use it. Like don't struggle. I
Yeah,
think
I
the
think there's
practical approach is
stigma
good.
around lube too, feeling like, well,
Mhm.
it's a crutch and I have to,
Mm,
I'm broken because I'm not wet enough. Like lube is
yeah. Lube is amazing. Yes. And I've actually had people come to my office and talk about, things that they've read or things that they've heard, that you should just use your natural lubrication, because that is an indicator to you about whether you're really turned on or really want to do it or not. And if you're not lubricated, then that's a signal that maybe you don't want to, or maybe it's time to stop. And certainly I think that can be true for some people, but for other people, that's just not going to be true, and it's not helpful. And the stigma around lube is too bad, because it is an amazing thing. Makes things so much more comfortable. And it also really protects your tissues from too much friction, from tearing, from any of that uncomfortable stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So what is some of the biggest reasons that people come to you, or one of the biggest roadblocks, vulva blocks, if you will,
Yes.
to having an orgasm?
Wow, I think there are a few. It's interesting, I actually have asked this question to a lot of women. What do you think is holding you back? And there are a few big categories of responses. Actually, the biggest one is women say, my partner doesn't do things that would bring me to orgasm, which was actually a huge eye-opener for me. That's the number one answer that I get when I ask that question. And so that to me says that, people aren't connecting around, or either partners aren't connecting around what she needs sexually, or she's, not comfortable enough to ask, which I think is really understandable. And a lot of women would say that it's uncomfortable to ask for what you need. And so that's a big thing, just not either lack of communication or lack of understanding about what she might need in bed to have an orgasm. So that's a big one. I think the second biggest thing that I see is some kind of mental block. So like you were saying earlier, it's easy to get in your head and get into this loop and be distracted from the pleasure that would actually bring you to orgasm. So I think I know that's a big umbrella category, but I think that's the second biggest thing is either getting into that kind of anxiety loop about, am I going to have one? Is it happening? Okay, I'm going to try to have one. Now I'm frustrated.
Or it's taking too long. I better hurry up.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you brought that up. Yes, I'm taking too long. Sometimes people have had difficult sexual experiences, and those feelings can come up during sex, and that gets in the way of orgasm. So I think the second biggest one is kind of this big umbrella of mental, so psychological, emotional things that are distracting from the pleasure. That's another big one. And then sometimes women don't know. Like, I think for a lot of women who haven't had an orgasm yet, one of the most common answers that I get is, to what's holding you back is, I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. Mm-hmm. And so then it's about figuring out, what is it? Is there mental stuff? Is there, physical stuff? Are you getting the right stimulation? Are you getting turned on? So,
yeah. And that's where the orgasm doctor comes in.
That's right.
Comes in.
Ta-da.
Okay, so tell me about your Big O masterclass and what people can expect and where they can find information on that.
Totally, yeah. So my Big O masterclass is my baby. I'm going to tell you, I love it so much. What I set out to do was to put into an online program everything that you would learn and everything that you would do if you came to sex therapy for difficulty having orgasms. And so it's divided into 4 main sections. The first one is frame of mind. So exactly what we're talking about, the mental stuff that goes into having an orgasm or not. The second is arousal. So figuring out what turns you on, how to turn yourself on, how to be comfortable feeling turned on. The third is stimulation, understanding what kind of stimulation you need mentally and physically to get turned on, and then also physically to have an orgasm, and doing some self-exploration to understand what that is. And then the fourth area is how to put it, how to integrate it all, put it all together for yourself, and then how to have an orgasm with a partner, how to translate everything that you've learned to when another person's in the room, because then it changes, because lots of other things are happening and lots of other things come up. And so it's a 10-week program, broken into those sections, those modules, that is my best effort at replicating, if somebody came to me for sex therapy, what we would cover and how we would do things, so that they could learn to have orgasms somewhere along the way. And there's actually homework in the course called pleasure sessions, which I think is like the best homework ever, where you set aside time to really explore your body, explore your thoughts, your mind, your feelings, and really get to understand yourself on a deeper level when it comes to sexuality and sexual arousal and what you need in order to have an orgasm. So that is the Big O Masterclass. And the best way to get info about it is actually to take the Orgasm Spectrum quiz. It's, I think, a really fun little, I mean, you took it, right? It's quick, fun. It's a fun little way to learn more. So once you take the Orgasm Spectrum quiz, you get your, quiz results, and then the next day you'll get an email for a training, a webinar about the Big O Masterclass. And so then you can watch it and decide if it's for you or not. So that's how you do it. It's actually really easy.
Nice. And and where can people go? It's Her Therapy Secrets. Is that correct?
Yeah. hertherapysecrets.com/quiz will take you right to the Orgasm Spectrum quiz. And I think that's the best way to go in.
Great. Is that your Instagram as well?
My Instagram is at Her Therapy Secrets.
Great. All right.
Yeah. So check it out. It's a fun Instagram.
Yes, it is.
It's a fun Instagram.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to have found you and to have this conversation with you. And I think you're doing amazing work, the goddesses work. So keep on.
Yes. I appreciate that. And thanks so much for having me. It's so lovely to get to talk to you. And I love your work too. Your performance is just beautiful. So yeah, it's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Yes. All right, everybody. So it's time to spread your legs and spread the love. Go and follow Dr. Erica Marchand at Her Therapy Secrets. And you can follow us at I Look Down There, or me at Michelle Amore, all on Instagram. Like us, share us, follow us, do all the good things. We love it. And don't forget to grab a mirror and look down there.